Have you ever thought about how a single event can just completely change the world? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon. This is a story that starts with one spark in France, but it sets off this massive chain reaction, toppling dominoes of power and literally building the modern world as we know it.
And nothing captures the start of this story better than this one infamous phrase. Now, whether she really said it or not doesn't even matter. When Queen Marie Antoinette was told her people were starving, the rumored reply, "Let them eat cake," was the perfect soundbite. It showed a ruling class so totally out of touch with reality that a revolution didn't just feel possible, it felt absolutely necessary. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at a kingdom that's about to completely fall apart. Then, we'll watch as the revolutionary fire catches and spreads. Out of that chaos, a new, incredible leader, Napoleon, will rise. And finally, we'll take a look at the world they left behind and why it still matters so much today.
Okay, so the big question is, how did it even get to this point? How did one of the most powerful and wealthiest nations in Europe find itself on the brink of total collapse? Well, it was a total pressure cooker of problems. The government was flat broke, thanks to over-the-top royal spending and a bunch of expensive wars. But instead of trying to fix the system, they handed the entire bill to just one group, the Third Estate. We're talking about 97% of the population here, everybody from poor farmers to city workers, while the clergy and the nobles paid basically nothing. It was a system just begging to break. And bubbling underneath all of this were these radical new ideas from the Enlightenment, whispering that a different, much fairer world was actually possible.
Every revolution needs a villain. And for a lot of people in France, that villain was Marie Antoinette. Her reputation for living this incredibly lavish lifestyle, whether it was totally fair or not, made her the perfect face for a wasteful, careless monarchy. It was like all the frustration and anger of an entire nation found a single human target.
So all that pressure had to go somewhere, right? Next up, we're going to see how all that simmering anger finally boils over and erupts into a full-blown rebellion. And this is the explosion. When a mob stormed the Bastille prison on July 14, 1789, this wasn't just some riot. The Bastille was the ultimate symbol of the king's oppressive power, so tearing it down, brick by brick, was the people basically shouting that the old world was officially over. That one single act of defiance is why it's still France's most important national holiday. And just look at how fast everything happened. It's truly breathtaking. Within just a few weeks of the Bastille falling, a brand new revolutionary constitution was declared. But in less than 4 years, things went from talking about rights to retribution. The monarchy was gone, and both the king and queen were publicly executed, a move that sent an absolute shockwave through every royal court in Europe. But this whole thing wasn't just about destruction. It was about building something new from the ground up. And at the very heart of it was this document, the Declaration of the Rights of Man. It laid out this world-changing idea that power comes from the people, not a king, and that fundamental rights like liberty and equality belong to everyone. This wasn't just a reform, it was a complete reinvention of what society could be.
But years of revolutionary chaos created a massive power vacuum. The nation was unstable, it was vulnerable, and one incredibly ambitious young general saw his chance to bring order, but on his own terms.
Just look at this meteoric rise. Napoleon Bonaparte, this outsider from a minor noble family, used his unbelievable military genius to just rocket through the ranks. He goes from a simple lieutenant to a national hero, and then he uses that fame to grab political power for himself. And in the end, he drops any pretense of revolution, and in this move of just stunning ambition, crowns himself emperor.
And this right here perfectly captures the whole puzzle of Napoleon. On the left, you've got the young general, a product of the very revolution that tore down a monarchy. And on the right, you see what he became, an emperor, creating a brand new monarchy of his own. His journey really embodies both the promise and, you could argue, the betrayal of the revolution. But here's the thing about Napoleon. He wasn't just a warmonger, he was a builder. He created the Napoleonic Code, which was this incredible legal system based on equality that's still influential all over the world. He built institutions like the Bank of France to get the economy under control, and he created a public school system. In a lot of ways, he built the very bones of modern France. But when you build an empire and that much ambition, well, it's bound to have a pretty dramatic fall. Now we're going to see how Napoleon's own drive ended up being his undoing, and what kind of legacy this whole chaotic era left for the rest of us.
For a solid decade, Napoleon seemed absolutely invincible. But his ambition finally outran his genius. A disastrous invasion of Russia completely shattered his army, and the other nations of Europe all ganged up on him. After one last desperate gamble, his story ends right here, at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The man who had conquered a continent was defeated for good and sent to die on a remote, lonely island.
So what's the final takeaway? Well, the ideas of the revolution, liberty, equality, they couldn't be put back in the box. They spread across the globe. And kind of ironically, Napoleon's own conquests sparked the very force that would reshape Europe forever, nationalism. Suddenly people started thinking of themselves as Germans or Italians, not just subjects of some distant king. And out of this fire, the modern nations of Europe were forged, and the idea of a secular state became a cornerstone for democracies everywhere.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question about this man and his time. Was Napoleon the revolution's greatest son, the ultimate proof that talent could triumph over your birth, or was he its greatest betrayer, a man who used the language of liberty to build his own personal empire? It's a puzzle historians still argue about, and it's the central, complicated legacy of this world-changing time.